The Dark Voyager has the final Zero Point Shard, but something is off. So as you know, the Dark Voyager has returned to the Golden Coast. But if you look very closely, you'll see that he has the final Zero Point Shard with him as well. Which means there can only mean one thing, is that the Dark Voyager successfully extracted the final Zero Point Shard from the Elite's armory in the Elite stronghold at Reality 337 in Fortnite Reload. And all of us are now wondering, how did this happen? How did the Dark Voyager took the final Zero Point Shard from the Elites? Well, the only one person who can tell us this is Jules. After finding a second Golden Rift, which was pretty odd, with an Elite outpost at Tree Chopped Timber Mill, we decided to ask Jules of what happened at the Elite Stronghold to figure out how did the Dark Voyager took the final Zero Point Shard. And according to Jules, the Dark Voyager used the full power of the Dark Harvester's tractor beam to successfully extract the Zero Point Shard from its container in the Elite's armory. Because if you go to Fortnite Reload right now and go to the Elite Stronghold, you will see the aftermath of what happened in the Elite's armory, which involves the Dark Voyager using the full power of the tractor beam from the Dark Harvester to successfully extract the final Zero Point Shard. Which means the Dark Voyager now has all 7 Zero Point Shards on the Golden Coast. But however, Jules doesn't know what the Dark Voyager is planning now for the shards, and wants our assistance to help her investigate. And we decided to agree to help her with that. So after helping her to investigate about what the Dark Voyager wants for the shards, one of our tasks gives us an actual answer that we've been suspecting since the beginning of Chapter 7 in Chapter 7 Season 1. One of our missions was to find 2 broken detection devices by going dumpster diving. And after finding 2 broken devices, it says one word at a time, but if you piece them together, it says one complete word, which says rebuild 0 point. That's right. Our suspicions from the very start of Chapter 7 all the way back to Chapter 7 Season 1 Pacific Break and Breakpoint are actually coming true. The Dark Voyager is planning to rebuild the 0 point by using all 7 shards to complete that task. And after finding out this information, we report this to Jules. And according to her, now knowing that the plan for the Dark Voyager to rebuild the 0 point is underway, she can't stay neutral anymore. And now she decided to call up Hope and Jones and inform them of the situation that we're now in. That the Dark Voyager is indeed planning to rebuild the 0 point. Because according to Jules, it turns out the shards want to be whole again. They want to be one again, which means the 0 point wants to be whole again, which is kind of odd, but I guess that makes sense since this, if you know, the 0 point is a sentient being after all. So it makes sense why it wants to be one again. But it needs a lot of 0 point energy in order to rebuild it. And according to Jules, if the Dark Voyager succeeds in rebuilding the 0 point, it can spell disaster for the entire Omniverse, which is pretty bad. And all of you may be wondering if the Dark Voyager is still on the Golden Coast since he has all 7 Zero Point Shards on the Golden Coast. Well, not exactly. Because not even a day later, the Dark Voyager just seemingly just left the Golden Coast for a 5th time. And this one is actually weird, because the Dark Voyager has all 7 Zero Point Shards to rebuild the 0 point. And with concentrated 0 point energy that he needs to rebuild it, it's kind of odd that he just seemingly just left the Golden Coast for the 5th time. But now all of us are wondering, why did he left for the 5th time? Where is he going this time? Well, it's probably just something, but it seems that maybe the Dark Voyager is returning to Fortnite OG's timeline. Because as you know, the Dark Voyager seemingly just came in the right place but in the wrong time. It seems that the Dark Voyager is planning to come to Fortnite OG's timeline when the vaulting event happens. Because you know, currently in Chapter 1 Season 8 OG, right now, the vault is being dug up as we speak. Which means the Dark Voyager seemingly left the Golden Coast in order to see the vaulting event happening right this instant. which means the Dark Voyager will come back to Fortnite OG's timeline in order to see the vaulting event happen. But he will have to wait until that happens. But now, we just don't know where he is currently in the Omniverse. He's probably either chatting with his mysterious master, or he is probably returning to Fortnite OG's timeline in order to see that the vaulting event is happening. So yeah, it can be either one of those scenarios. But now, we now have a very dangerous things to see right now. With the Dark Voyager now having 7 Zero Point Shards on the island and him just mysteriously just vanished for some unknown reason, this is still pretty bad, considering the Dark Voyager is now a actual threat. And with Jules now calling Hope and Jones to help us with this situation because we really need some help with this since the Dark Voyager is now going to rebuild the Zero Point. But now there's the biggest question. How would the Dark Voyager rebuild the Zero Point? Because, again, he needs concentrated Zero Point energy to rebuild the Zero Point to make it whole again, because that's what the Zero Point wants. It wants to be whole again. Well, there is one Zero Point energy that can possibly repair the Zero Point to make it whole again. Make it be one again. Because, again, that's what the Zero Point wants. It wants to be whole again. And there's one powerful concentrated Zero Point energy that we've been standing under the island since the very beginning of Chapter 7. Back in Chapter 7, Season 1, Pacific Break and Breakpoint. And that is no other than the Particle Accelerator. That's right. It's possible that the Dark Voyager will use the Particle Accelerator with very, very powerful Zero Point energy to rebuild the Zero Point to make it whole again. Because as you know, the Particle Accelerator has a lot of Zero Point energy. And if the Dark Voyager is able to extract the Zero Point energy from the Particle Accelerator to rebuild the Zero Point, then this will allow the Zero Point to actually be whole again. But which is still bad. Because according to Jules, if the Dark Voyager will to succeed, the Zero Point will now be back to be misused and be fallen to the wrong hands once again. Which means we're now in a very, very deep pickle right now. We need to figure out how to now stop this rivalry between the Foundation and the Exalted Ice King. Because again, the Dark Voyager is kindly the reason why this showdown rivalry between the Foundation and the Exalted Ice King is happening. Because he's using this showdown battle between those two as an extraction to find the rest of the Zero Point Shards, including the final one, which he successfully did. If we can find some way to stop the Foundation and the Exalted Ice King's, continuous showdown rivalry towards each other, that we'll be able to work together as one team to beat the Dark Voyager and stop him to rebuild the Zero Point. But now we need to figure out how to do that. Because it won't be easy. But now, with Jules now not staying neutral anymore and getting Hope and Jones involved, and especially getting them informed, let's just say things are not looking good at the moment. So yeah, that's it. That's all you need to know what's going on in Chapter 7, Season 2 Showdown. But the Dark Voyager successfully having all 7 Zero Point Shards on the island and mysteriously just left for some unknown reason, possibly returning to Fortnite OG's timeline or talking to his mysterious master, we have to wait and see what's going to happen. And with the vaulting event happening pretty soon in Chapter 1, Season 8 OG, let's just say we're probably going to see the Dark Voyager's plan really taking a toll. And now with Hope and Jones now getting involved too by getting informed of the Dark Voyager's plan about what's going to happen and having them to know that the dire situation is to figure out a plan to stop him, yeah, it's a lot to process. So with that said, thank you all so much for watching this video. Comment down below what your favorite things to do in Fortnite, creativity by players, Fortnite Ballistic, Fortnite Reload, the arrival of Fortnite Chapter 1 Season 8 OG, Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 2 Showdown's story continuing, which is pretty cool, and Fortnite Save the World and Fortnite Reload with the new Elite Stronghold, and also to check the aftermath of the Dark Voyager using his Dark Harvester. So you can comment down below What's your favorite moments in Fortnite Chapter 7 Season 2 Showdown, Chapter 1 Season 8 OG, and Fortnite Save the World, and even with Fortnite Reload with the new edition with the Elite Stronghold as well. Comment down below what Fortnite theories you want me to cover, discuss, and debunk, and I'll gladly make videos about them. Subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you won't miss any videos from me. I'll see all of you in the next video. Bye!